Hi, and welcome to Mac Discussions. I think what we probably should do first is introduce ourselves here. I'll start. My name is Jomar. I'm the production coordinator at CFMU, and maybe we'll go to Olivia next.
Awesome. I'm Olivia Mandolini, and I'm the music director at CFMU.
I'm Kate Amelia, and I'm the new staff writer for the Silhouette.
Alrighty, so now that we've established who we are, and now that you know who we are, I think we're going to get right into what we wanted to discuss. And I think it's going to be a very open discussion on just how things have been going with the return of all of our activities in person, the return to in-person activities here at MAC.
After 2 years.
After 2 years.
2 years of being away.
More or less. I think we're
One-
coming up on 2 years practically, right, eh?
Yeah, almost, because February 7th, and like we left March 13th. So I guess just under the 2 years. But
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's crazy how much time has flown, isn't it? Just thinking, I never thought I'd be back here because I knew that I figured when we left, I said I'm probably not going to be back in time to see it in person, but I guess here we are now. So it's quite interesting how time flies. However, with that also, I know there are a lot of things that have come up, things that are good that people are excited for, but also a lot of concerns just because of how things have progressed, how we thought things were going to progress back in the fall. And then as to how things have turned up now. So maybe we should just start with going around and seeing what your take has been on how the execution of getting things back in person has been. Maybe we'll start there.
yeah, well, I think it's been a little bit messy, to say the least, just with not so much transparency from the university. And I know it's not like the university's fault, it's no one's fault, because there are all these like government regulations that change so quickly. Like it takes a while for the university, I'm guessing, to get like information on what's allowed, what's permitted, and then to come up with a plan and then transmit it to the students. I think that there's like the line of communication makes it difficult to be like updated so quickly. But there has been a lot of changes in policy because of this, like regarding proof of vax at school and showing our identification, and the MAC check COVID screening protocols have changed quite frequently. So I just think there are a lot of inconsistencies that we can address during today's discussion. And I'm kind of here like supporting the student voice. So I want to kind of like advocate for the student perspective in this discussion.
Oh yeah, for sure. Go for it. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with Olivia. I think it's been a little inconsistent, just going from completely online to hybrid and then to fully in person, just because it is hard for the students to know like when we were gonna come back. I think it was like October 21st. They let us know that this would be in person.
Yeah.
But I think I also agree with Olivia in that the university they're also just people, they only know as much as we do. So I think it's really like due to the government's like changing. And then about Mac Check, I think, yeah, it's definitely also been pretty inconsistent, I would say, and now I think is a little bit less useful than it used to be.
Yeah, because they used to have like a McMaster portal where we answered questions about like our symptoms, and now it's like you have to go to MacCheck, and then MacCheck will ask you, oh, did you complete the government screening? And then you say yes or no, sort of based off of that. And then like that's the MacCheck. I'm not sure how helpful that is, because I know for me, like it's just like asking if I've done the government screening. Is not the same thing as actually doing the government screening. I don't know how many students are actually doing the government screening. And I don't know if MacCheck was like more helpful before this change or after this change. Yeah.
I mean, probably shouldn't be suggesting anything when I say this, but it is possible that somebody could, because it takes you to a new tab to complete the provincial assessment, right? But somebody could just close it and say, yep, I'm done, I'm good to go. Even though they say it's a serious offense, you never really know. If people are taking it, but we might be exposing people at this, but at the same time, it just comes to show that because I remember before they did that, they did have it all. It was on MacCheck, but it was within MacCheck specifically. So all the questions, everything that was there. So you kind of had to go through the motions, even if you were kind of. I might have been the same thing. Like somebody could argue, say, yeah, you could just quickly go through it and say, no, I don't have any symptoms, when you probably did have them anyways, but. That just comes with self-assessments in general. So I think it kind of would have been the same effect anyway.
I'm really interested in talking about like the inconsistencies with being back in person. Like, for example, when you go to the gym, they ask you for like your government ID, your student ID, your proof of vaccination, and then your MAC check. But isn't it implied that if we can do MAC check, we have been vaccinated? Like it's mandatory. So I'm confused as to why, like, to get into the gym, it's like X, Y, and Z, but like to get into the library, you're just showing like your MAC check and that's it. I don't know if it makes sense.
Oh
Maybe
no,
the
it
gym is like
absolutely
a
does.
whole other facility that like it just seems very quick. Like these like rash decisions are being made like super fast. Like, okay, we're not going to be in school for 3 weeks. Okay, everyone come back to school. Okay. We have all of these like it's not like really like extreme conflict, but like make like trying to stress the like need for the population to get vaccinated. Ontario was doing that for like so long, and now all of a sudden, it's like no more need. So it's a little bit like, was it really like why spend all of this time like really pushing this if now we're just gonna not use the vaccine passport, or like why did we use QR codes for 2 months, right? I don't know.
Right. It kind of leaves me wondering if McMaster will still require vaccines for residents,
Yeah.
or I guess we'll have to wait and see what they say. But I think this will make it even more inconsistent on top of the inconsistencies you've already talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing that I see, it's probably just, I think it's just when they make the decisions, a lot of what they think about is mostly short term. So as opposed to going, well, you're thinking in the long run, what's going to happen? You know, when they had even the first decisions of implementing the vaccine passports and the certifications is, you know, is this something that's going to stay with us forever? Is it going to be just something that they're going to have for a period of time? But a lot of the decisions, I guess, that have come about they've just been thinking of the short term. But the problem, I guess, with that is that the short term has been changing so rapidly. I remember, you probably remember back in January when they thought we were going to reopen and everybody was going to come back early January. But all of a sudden, when Omicron came around and all the cases started ramping up, then they said, no, we're going to dial back and you're going to come back to being, go back online until I think they pushed it back to just a couple weeks ago or so.
Yeah.
So a lot of very reactive decisions, but not a lot of insight into what the long term might be.
Yeah. And is it fair? Like, is it fair to, I know in October they said, okay, it's going to be in person. And then I think December 16th, they're like, it's going to be delayed in person till January, like 27th, I think, or like, oh, yeah.
Something like that.
And then I think like 5 days before school was starting, they changed it again to February 7th. And do you guys think it's fair to ask students to find temporary housing for 2 months? Or like, I guess a little bit more than 2 months, but like we're in the middle of February right now.
I don't think that it is. That's definitely not okay. I think that's probably why they opened up a residence to upper years, which I think was a good move. But I'm not really sure how, I don't know about like the number of people who actually access that.
Yeah.
But I spoke with the housing coordinator. She said people were applying. So
that's good. I'm glad that, yeah, the school at least offered like residence for like upper year students and graduate students. I know they also started like a student first rental program, so landlords can apply to be like labeled as a student first rental if they check off a couple boxes, like they have month to month sublets or like reasonable cost and like less of a like strict 8-month lease or like year lease. They can be like labeled as the university or like by the university as like a student first rental. And I think the benefit of this for the landlord is that it just allows them to continue to post on MAC off-campus housing for like an extra 3 months for free. Not really sure how great that is. Again, I'm not a landlord, and I guess we can talk about the landlord perspective a little bit. But yeah, I don't know if that was something a lot of students like found, like what month to month leases. I don't know many students that are subletting month to month. Most of the students I've spoken to have like committed to 8-month sublets or year leases. And I know I've been in a 2-year lease because once like the first year I like signed without like prior to everything going online, and then like that first year we were online, they're like, okay, we're going to be back in person, like you have to be on campus. And then I signed again, and then we kind of have been just now coming back to campus, so it's not been a super fun experience.
And I hear some people have been even contemplating lease takeovers because they're not even sure if they're going to keep the rest of the, even though ours conveniently happen to end in April. I know that some places, other universities have really weird general lease terms, like they start from in September, they end in August or something along those lines. So, like for them, it's probably even harder to say, do I really want to keep this entire lease, or do I want to, are we even going to be doing this in person in September for fall 2022? And all these kinds of questions. So, alongside all these month to month or people just saying, let's stick with this, I have also heard of people doing lease takeovers, and just I imagine the doubts and the uncertainty that's going through their minds, are thinking, should I really do this, or just hang on to it, and maybe by chance I made the right decision, and I have a place at least for the fall. I know that, yeah, it's just there's a lot of uncertainty around it.
Like also we have some professors who are teaching courses who are teaching fully in person. In-person attendance is required, in-person tests, like not streaming the lectures. And then on the other hand, you have professors who are still offering their courses both in person and remotely. So I do have one friend who's like not living here. Like he only has to commute back here for tests, and that's something that he can do, because fortunately, like the courses he's taken are also being like posted. Those lectures are being posted, and like he can find a way to manage that by only having to be here like once every 2 weeks maybe. But for other students, like I guess I'm assuming like nursing would require like a lot of in-person. So I guess it's like depending on the program, but also like even in my program, biochem, some courses are still being given remotely, and then some courses are also being like only taught in person. So I feel like in my position, it's kind of like, okay, like could there be some consistency here, just to like make it not so forced that students have to be here. I think some professors are really like forcing students to like come here, like, yeah.
Yeah, or some, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you can go.
Oh, I was just going to say that it also could be now on the professor side. I just to think about it that way. I know that there are many different capacities in terms of how far professors can go, how comfortable they are with using remote technologies and stuff. But I know that some, and I guess it comes down to some who simply are, they probably can't, whether they can't afford the time or the resources to be able to get classes in, to have that option to make it both remote and in person. Or sometimes they just feel like, oh, I just want to teach it a certain way, and have everybody in person. So maybe that's kind of what they've had it at. But again, coming as a student, if you have all these mixed modes, I can just imagine, it can be confusing. Like, sometimes you'll say, okay, maybe this is in person, I have to go for this. It's just your schedule's probably going to become more of a mess than it already is.
Right. I found it interesting too that on the Return to McMaster oversight committee report, they always planned to not require professors to record lectures. So even in June of the summer that just passed, they knew that even when we went back, they wouldn't require it. But I just wonder why it wasn't planned that they would offer both, just because everyone's comfort level, I think, is different. I know that there was a petition going around about having going back to online classes, that I think the Silhouette is going to write an article about soon, actually. And then there's some people who I know who just wanted to be fully back in person last semester. So I think it depends on everyone's comfort levels. That's why I feel like it shouldn't be just one plan. I wish it was you could choose.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially because this is the first time that we're actually in person. It's been this prolonged thing that we're going to be in person, but now officially we are. I felt like they would ease into it a little bit more. I imagine in the future, eventually, yes, we will all have to be in person, but to make this massive change on a random Monday in February and provide very little accommodations is not fair to the students. And I've seen that McMaster Student Success Center has written a little bit about this, okay, you have anxiety coming back to work, coming back to school, here are some helpful resources, school counseling resources, and how to manage your stress level. But I mean, students have always been stressed. Students have always had anxiety attending, working in school and attending university. This isn't a new issue, and they're kind of just using the same resources that they used pre-pandemic now and not addressing the like position that they're putting students in. It
Yeah.
just seems like they're not being very accountable.
Or at least maybe there's an opportunity presenting itself to say, hey, now that we know that there's this online mode of delivery, some people might actually be comfortable with that even. And so taking that opportunity to say, well, let's have a look and see, are we really catering to all the different learning styles of the students? Or are we just still going back to, if we're going to go back to normal, we're just going to take it back and say, everybody comes back in person, but then at the detriment of students who have found that online learning or remote learning was better for them, whether it was for logistics or even just for them as an individual in learning. So, it probably, if they do keep it forward and just scrap remote entirely, for those students, it might be a missed opportunity to be able to further kind of, I guess, what they believe is this accommodation for all different kinds of learning styles. And so that opportunity would be missed, I think.
Definitely. I had a lab the other day where there was a couple of us in person, and he was also helping people online. It was for statistics, and it ended up working fine. So for things like that, I feel like to make both an option, if it's not an issue, I think is the best plan.
I think
we had one too. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, it's definitely possible. It should be possible given that we spent the first month online. I felt like it would almost be easier to just maintain that, or relatively easy to maintain the online presence if the first third of the course was already given remotely. What were you going to say, Jomar?
No, I was just gonna, because Kate reminded me actually, because I had a class, the last one that I had, there was a lab that one of the professors had attempted to say, yeah, we're going to try this with both modes. And I actually TA'd for a course that had both modes. Now, technological was aside, whether there were connection problems or anything. I mean, it was totally feasible actually too. And I mean, now I can just imagine the argument on the other side saying, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of setup, and I can imagine that and understand that. But on the side of when it comes to, the fact that we've actually been able to get it to work, and it just means it is definitely very possible to do.
Yeah. Well, do you think okay, from the other perspective, do you think it was just time for everyone to bite the bullet, just come back in person, kind of move on from this 2-year really weird time we've been living in? Is there a part of you guys that agree that maybe it just had to be the Band-Aid had to be ripped off?
For my personal view, that's kind of what I wanted to do, because I'm I know I'm safe because I'm triple vaccinated and everyone on campus at least has 2 vaccines, and I know that there's procedures in place to keep me as safe as you can be during a pandemic. But the thing is, I don't think that you can decide that for somebody else. I think that's why I think there needs to be the range of in person and online, because I think there is a good mix of both. I think we still would have gotten a lot of people coming back anyways.
Yeah, there's definitely a huge cohort of students that just wanted to be back. And I was one of them. I love that we're back. But yeah, I think that definitely, you're right. It's just, it should be kind of more in the students' hands than it is right now.
I think I should also extend this to not just domestic students, but international students, because I imagine, not just with time zone differences for them doing things remotely, but for the people that had either they must have all sorts of situations going on right now, whether they're kind of stuck here trying to find housing, or if they are debating on whether they have to head back to their countries or if they stay here. They probably have, they're in probably they're in all sorts right now, I imagine, especially with all these quick decisions that are being made and just these rapid changes sometimes when the university does a 180 on you or something. So them all the more so, I can imagine all the different issues there. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you. I actually wrote an article before the winter break about what international students would be doing. And one of them was talking about how he stayed the entire year where we were online in Bangladesh. And then one of them was saying how he ended up staying here instead. So I felt like they kind of had to choose, if school comes back online, do I want to be in my country, or do I want to try and be here? Because what if I get stuck in one place and then can't go back? So
yeah,
I think that was difficult. But at least this year, before Omicron, people were able to fly. So I think it's definitely been getting better.
Mm-hmm.
But I totally agree. That's a whole other issue that students here don't have to think about, having to come back. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's a lot of pressure to make as a as a student receiving like no information, kind of like you're like betting on like you're betting blindly.
Yeah, even like I wouldn't go to the States right now because I think you need, I don't want to say for sure what you need because I ended up realizing it was too difficult because I think you need a PCR test to come back. They might have changed it, but even that, I'm like, that's still too much. Like I wouldn't want to
Yeah.
get stuck there.
Mhm.
I've heard of a lot of cases where people are like leaving somewhere testing negative and then arriving somewhere like repeating the like rapid test and testing positive and just getting trapped, and
Oh, gee.
sounds really like not a fun time. That happened a lot over the holidays, and I do think it was like smart to delay in person by like a week after the holidays because like there was a lot of mixing over that like break period.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, that made sense to me. Yeah, it's very complicated. There's a lot of factors. Everything's
Oh, yeah.
very strict. I do think that like these rash decisions made by like the government have been like sort of as a result because of the upcoming like election for like Ontario Premier. So I think that maybe some of the choices that are being made by like our government right now might be like skewed to like appeal to the voter population. But
Yeah. But then also, I guess now that the thought just came to me, you then never know what happens beyond the election. You know, if whoever is in power will start making more rash changes, or if things are, or if they're irrational changes, who knows what's going to end up happening. So the uncertainty, I guess, is still there, if I were putting it in that way. And even just what coming back to Mac, I think what I was going to say is, what are you guys thinking about how things will look like, let's say, for maybe if it isn't this term, because I know we're still kind of readjusting back. What do you think fall 2022 might end up looking like?
it's a good question. I think that I think things will continue to be in person. I don't think that McMaster's like now that we're like we've tried it, it hasn't like we haven't fallen burning down in flames yet, I guess, as an institution. I think that if this semester goes smoothly, we can bet on staying in person and like making the transition even more to like more in-person schooling, which is great. It's really nice to see students like hanging out together and like going to classes and just like the Mac life's coming back, and I'm liking it. So I do think that McMaster going forward will be returning more to normality and in-person activities, and but I do think that certain things won't go back to normal for a while. Like maybe instead of like large student like club meetings, those meetings might stay on Zoom. I know a lot of like societies that I'm a part of and like my lab group, we've decided to maintain remote meetings because of, I guess, just time efficiency. So that might just like that aspect might stay remotely now that we know that it is easy to just like get together, like have a discussion. We've become so dependent on Zoom. I don't know if Zoom's really going to be going anywhere anytime soon.
Oh, they're probably having a wild time. The people of Zoom, they're like, wow, this service is going to be used for quite some time.
Yeah. What about you, Kate?
Yes, I definitely agree with you. I think some things like extracurricular clubs will probably be online for a while still. And then I think, unless I don't want to say anything and have it be wrong in like 8 months, I'll be like, oh, that was so. Unless there's another variant that really takes us out, I think it's gonna look pretty similar. I'm hoping we'll still have masks. I was reading a New York Times article that reported on like the decision made yesterday, and I think the quote was, Ford said, we'll have masks a little while longer still, and I was like,
The masks are very effective. The science is there. I really hope that those just, I really hope those stay on. But
yeah, I mean, and you can also see it
knows?
in communities like down in the States where they've completely dropped the mandate entirely, and sort of how they've been coping, seeing how the effects of COVID have happened there. It's like seeing how cases have risen more or whatever it is. But it really comes to show that, I guess, we're just going to have to sit tight a bit with the masks, which, I mean, I'm all for them. I don't mind it, even though, even if it's just a little bit of protection, it still helps. Like, it goes a long way, as you guys have said. I totally agree with that for sure. And that sort of thing. Sorry, Kate, you might have been on anything else. Did you have anything?
No, you just reminded me that I think it's going to be a whole different anxiety of not having masks on anymore once we do that. But I don't think we'll have to tackle that next semester.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think
Oh
so.
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, because people, some people might still be on edge, even just being on here on campus. Like all of a sudden, seeing the place just filled with students and people all over again, they're probably going, I don't know where I'm supposed to back out into certain corners or try to dodge these large lines of people or these large masses of people. And so I think there is that adjustment, I guess, we'll probably be going through in a while. But I mean, I pretty much am foreseeing the same thing that you two are. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess that's the discussion. Thank you guys so much
Thank
for
you.
the silhouette
having
and
me.
CFMU.